Welcome back to Make More Love. In this show, we share real strategies that help high-performing men build passionate, intimate relationships and live fulfilling lives. I'm your host, Ellen Dorian. I'm both a relationship coach and a business coach, so I know how to handle all the crap that comes up when you're working to be the best at everything. So let's get into it. Today is part 2 of my interview with Manny Wolfe. But first, I want to share some of my thoughts on this conversation. One of the gifts of editing my own podcast is that I can listen for what's unsaid as well as what's said. And that can spark some connections that might not be obvious on that casual listen. Some parts of Manny's story are so intense, growing up in a cult, addiction, deep trauma, that it might be easy to think, wow, that's heavy, but it's not me. But underneath all those extremes are patterns and narratives that a lot of high-performing men have gone through and that you might recognize in your life and your relationship. Here are some key ones worth pointing out. The first one is solving the wrong problem. Manny talked about misdirected effort, trying to fix a problem by focusing on the wrong thing. And you and I both know this. We've all done it more times than we can count. And it perfectly describes what so many men do when their relationship hits a rough patch. Look, you're not dumb. You know when your partner is disappointed in you. But we've all bought into this myth of the good provider. And you hear that line from Breaking Bad in your head. A man provides, and he does it even when he's not appreciated or respected or even loved. But that myth leads you in the wrong direction. You double down on work, thinking it'll all be okay once you make that business successful, and then everything else will work itself out. Meanwhile, you're starving your partner of what they really want: connection, presence, time, attention, and they're getting even less of it. As Manny says, it's like your left hand's on fire and you're putting your right hand in water. And this, my friends, is how so many men end up with one successful business and 3 ex-wives. Number 2 is putting your integrity on the line. Manny talked about this idea of the moral man, the part of him that was watching everything he did, even the things he wasn't proud of, the part that knew better. He said, through all the terrible things I did, part of me was watching and going, what are you doing? But it just had no agency. I think a lot of men know exactly what he's talking about. There's a version of yourself that lives by a code, a personal definition of honor. You want to do right by the people you care about. You value honesty, protection, loyalty, all the things you want your partner and your kids to say about you. That's your moral man. But if you continually put your moral man in compromising positions, if you cheat on your partner, if you disrespect them, if you ignore their needs, if you badmouth them, if you withhold your love from them, if you stay silent when you know you should speak up, or you run your mouth when you know you should shut up, you're shitting on your moral man and not honoring your honor. And if you keep it up, it's not just your relationship that suffers. It's your self-worth that takes the hit. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody is. The only knights in shining armor are the ones who've never seen combat. We are all knights in broken armor here. So let's not try to be perfect. Let's just follow our inner code of honor and do our best to live by it. And key point number 3 is analyzing instead of executing. For me, one of the highlights of part 2 of the interview, which you are about to hear next, is when Manny talks about how he sometimes spends too much time in inner reflection instead of just going out and doing the thing that needs doing. I'm not giving out any spoilers here. You'll hear it from him in a minute. Sometimes reflection gives you wisdom, and sometimes it just gives you an excuse. It's like ready, aim, ready, aim, ready, aim, but you don't take the shot. You feel like you're doing something, but really you're just stalling. Manny has some colorful words for what to do when you catch yourself stuck in this loop, and I'll let him say it himself when we get to that part of the interview. So enough from me. Here's my interview with Manny Wolfe, Part 2. I'd love to see if we could get it into the plainest kind of language.
Good.
If we can do that. So the very plainest kind of language, like, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth either, but what was going on with the money and how did it feel? And how did that translate to how you viewed your relationship? And if you're talking to someone who's never heard of any of these things, who only has lived the life, what would you say? What was going on with the money?
Well, if what you do is you make money well, and you have problems in your family, in your health, or in your relationship, you're going to look to money as a way to solve those problems when you should be looking at other things. To a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is you're going to try to fit your hardest problems into an explanation that you're already familiar with, right?
Yes.
The idea is we'd all want love. And just don't even come at me saying otherwise. We all want it. It is food. It is oxygen. We want it. And so to watch my wife reject the idea and the value of love and reduce everything down to I'm not making enough money right now is bloodless and compromising, frankly. And so to try to put it in the simplest terms, your real world concrete problems will absolutely affect your money, and money problems will absolutely affect your relationship 100%.
Right. I want to pull a couple of very clear things just from what you said, because there are things I think every listener will totally relate to. And that is that one of three things might be true. Either your wife is saying our relationship is in trouble because you're not making enough money, right? Or you're afraid that if you don't make enough money, then your relationship will be in trouble, right? Or, and if you can make the business successful and therefore have wealth, the relationship problems will take care of themselves.
Right.
Those three things all relate to what you just said. And I think it's something that every single male married business owner can identify with, whether they experience it directly or not. That is, I would say, a universal truth for the married male business owner, entrepreneur type.
It certainly seems like it. Yeah. And then, the extra layer of complexity is that if you're having these sort of like deep soul level challenges with your partner, what's happening for them and their experience, it's probably the exact opposite of what you think it is. And that is so hard to wrap your head around. Like for instance, I seek communication. I create avenues for communication. And in the case of my wife, there are many times where that's the last thing she wants. And it feels to her like I'm cornering her. And to me, it's you won't give me communication. I feel like you're just drifting away. It's like that movie Gravity with Clooney and Bullock. And the cord has been severed and you're just fucking floating away into space. Meaningful long-term bonds are going to bring your stuff up. That's what they do. I mean, they do a lot of other stuff too, and it's wonderful, or we wouldn't stay, but you need to expect that that's going to happen.
Yes, absolutely. We should talk about what does money really mean, right? Because what I was talking about before about you're not making enough money or you're afraid you might not be. Money and security are a lot of times the same thing in people's heads. So if you're an anxious attachment style, right, it's not necessarily the money itself that is the thing. It's the security and safety and stability that the money brings. So you're not going to be homeless and you're not going to be starving and your kids are not going to be without clothes and shoes, right? And all those things. It's not the money, it's the stability. If you could provide stability without money, you wouldn't need the money. But most of us need money for stability.
I think that touches on a huge cultural myth. One of the biggest cultural myths. There's a lot of hysteria in the media, as there always is, but certainly lately. And it's really interesting that people are attempting to sell us narratives all the time. And whether we buy them or not is going to be determined by a number of factors, most of which come from our childhoods, right?
Yeah.
And so we're constantly being force-fed narratives, good or bad, right or left, wrong or right, whatever it is. And some of those narratives will actually work against you. So you're being demanded to buy into stories that will actually harm you. And I'm not going to take a political side here, but there's a great line in the movie The Usual Suspects where Kaiser Soze says, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making us believe he didn't exist. I love that. That is just...
That is a good line.
Well, you could argue that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making us believe that money wasn't important. And here's why. Money really has nothing to do with energy and values and morals. It's none of those things. And yet, generationally, most of us now are 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th generation in to buying some narrative about money that it is anything more than a completely neutral medium of exchange. Right? And now to borrow from Bill Cosby and his great joke about cocaine, he said, well, what is it that cocaine does for you? And his friend said, well, it amplifies your personality. And Bill Cosby famously said, yes, but what if you're an asshole?
We're going to continue this conversation, but let's take a minute here because a lot of you've been asking what happens when you work with me. Let me break that down for you. We don't just sit around talking, and I don't just dish out advice. I work from a place of logic and strategies and solutions because I believe the same strategies that solve business problems can be applied to relationships. So you and I will team up to get a clear picture of what's really going on in your relationship. Then we'll pinpoint the top priorities to work on. We lay out a strategic plan to target the things that will actually make a difference. And then I'm right there with you, supporting you as circumstances change and helping you stay focused on what's important. So if you're stuck in a loveless limbo, why would you want to stay there? Your first step out is easy. Set up a relationship reset call with me. It's free, it's quick, just 15 minutes, just you and me. You'll bring me up to speed. I'll let you know if I think I can help. And if not, I'll tell you that too. So head over to relationshipresetcall.com and grab a spot. Let's get you back on track to make more love in your life and with your wife. And we're back. Before the break, we were talking about money. So let's keep going with that.
Because money is a universal medium of exchange, you can take it and you can exchange it for goods and services anywhere. Obviously, more of it means more choice, more power, more leverage, more this, more that. And so while it itself is neutral, it will amplify tendencies that people already have. Imagine in a world where money is the universal medium of exchange, that you've been convinced that money is somewhere between not important and harmful. Just think about that in terms of your life. When I was poor, a flat tire could be a week-long ordeal. I'm not kidding, right? It could be a 2-week ordeal. Needing an oil change could be something that took a month to deal with. You see where I'm going with this? And
yeah, absolutely.
And so you see successful people talking about how, glibly I might add, about how after they got successful, they realized money ain't that convenient. You know? But when you couldn't afford new shoes, it mattered.
Yes.
And so then there's that more nuance. Well, above a certain amount of money, it doesn't, well, fine. Above a certain amount, it doesn't matter. But let's be honest, right? Like I like to joke, I don't think I've ever had a problem in my life that would have been made worse by an extra $100,000. You know? And so the narratives and the legends and the mythology around money needs to be examined by each person individually. Because to go through your life thinking that it is not important or that it is bad is self-sabotage at a level of cultural narrative. So
I totally agree. I was thinking when you started to say the biggest myth, you were going to say that money doesn't buy stability. And I was ready to argue
I wouldn't
with you. And there you go.
say that. Absolutely. It is the thing that buys stability,
It sure
right?
is. Yeah.
Here's what's interesting about all of those negative money beliefs. It's akin to fleas on a dog complaining about the quality of the skin they get to bite.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kid at the coffee shop with the $2,000 MacBook Pro
Mm-hmm.
with the Smash Capitalism sticker on it,
Mm-hmm.
drinking the $9 latte.
Right.
It's like, it's so everywhere that you don't even see the ways it helps you,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
If you live in the worst part of the United States, you still have a pathway up. And that is 100% because of capitalism and money. This is from somebody who comes from dirt poor, quasi-communistic brain programming. I know what it's like to be so poor that I wore homemade unisex hand-me-down clothes. And I got new shoes once a year if I was lucky. Nobody can come at me with any of this bourgeois sort of middle class stuff. I lived it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, every problem I've had would have been made better, easier with more money, and would have been made worse without money.
Yes.
From health problems to emotional problems to rent paying problems, like across the board.
Yeah.
And so for me to finally get to that place where it's like, what if the money shit is deflecting over? I was like, oh my God,
Does that mean you finally have enough money that you can see that not all problems are solved by money?
So I've had a lot of money at different points in my life, and I know how to make money. I had to go through some significant changes because the work I was doing in the world of coaching, I bottomed out with it. I can't keep doing it, and that's just for me. I got to sell a tangible service, a tangible good, a measurable thing. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but some part of me had already made a decision. You've got to stop doing this work and transition to some other work.
That's one of the reasons I have this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I felt the need for something more tangible and can reach a broader number of people. As we were wrapping up the interview, I asked Manny to reflect on what love and relationship mean to him now. And I wanted to talk about what he's doing next and why, how his perspective has changed, and what advice he has for other entrepreneurial men in relationships.
In terms of the time that has passed from writing the book till now, I don't know that I've had many changes in perspective as it relates to the lessons I tried to capture in that book. It's more like perhaps deeper understanding. Like most entrepreneurs, until you finally hit the thing that really blows up, this is the road you take. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. I think that it's fair to say that nothing will shake a marriage or a commitment more than the entrepreneurial journey. Like in the case of my wife and I, when we first came together, she was completely supportive of it. And only later did she reveal to me, well, I never said this to you, but I expected it to not take as long. Well, I don't know what to tell you, One thing I can say for sure is I don't lie. And in fact, I'm extremely cautious and careful of making promises I think I might not be able to keep. And so when it came to any kind of talk about, well, how long do you think it'll take before we're rich and famous? I'd always say, like, I can't give you an answer to that. Obviously, the dream for entrepreneurs is to build something that changes our station completely. Whether that thing lives or dies over time doesn't matter. We want to build stuff. We want to give stuff to the world. And by the way, a lot of people who call themselves entrepreneurs, especially online, are not entrepreneurs. It's just simply not what it is. So in that book, I tried to do two things. I tried to hold myself and everyone else to the same level of accountability. I tried to tell the truth is what I tried to do. And you can't tell the literal truth when you write a biography, an autobiography. Memory is not reliable enough for literal truth. So I strove for emotional truth, to speak the emotional truth of my life experience. And in so doing, I was inspired by a lot of literature, but certainly the more cloaked in analogy and parable self-help stuff from the 70s and 80s. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, for example, short little book full of beautiful life lessons, but you got to work for them. You don't just get them spoon-fed to you. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to tell this very unflinching personal story and hopefully make it accessible so that you don't have to have lived my life to learn the lessons from it. And if anything, my perspective has just deepened, moving along the same track.
I would recommend to everyone to read your book. I wish that you would read your book and make an audiobook of it, because a lot of my audience are audiobook fans, and so they would love that. And just in our talk today, hearing it in your voice makes it even more powerful than on the page, and it's pretty damn powerful on the page.
Well, I actually do have plans for my book. When I wrote it, I was working with a nonfiction book coach, and she really tried to push me to make it an elaborate sales page like most nonfiction expert books are. And I couldn't do it. I was not willing to do it. So one of our compromises was at the end, it sort of turns into this call to action after the story is over. And I never really liked that much. I'm more interested in it being a literary work than a client getting tool. And I didn't know that then. So there's a perspective shift.
Sure.
But moving out of the world of coaching and being a service provider and information broker, which is what I've been doing for 12 years, before my life is over, I'd like to make a contribution to culture through writing. That's something I want to do. And it's something that's taken me all this time to figure out. Just because it comes easy to you doesn't mean that it's not something you should be doing, which is an interesting sort of curse of the entrepreneur. We think we have to be doing things that are hard all the time. And in some cases, that's just not true.
Well, interesting, because we were talking about your family at the beginning of the conversation and their extraordinary talent. And yet,
none of them did anything.
And I'm seeing some parallels there because you have everything to be a great writer.
Which is really what I want to do. I want to do it in a way that is not like in your 20s where you just go burn the ships and just charge forward. I don't want to do that because I like the comforts of food and warmth and a house. And so there's a strategy at play, but ultimately I want to see what kind of a contribution I can make through writing. I think that's the gift I've been given that I express better than any other gift I've been given.
Your writing is really so vivid because I have never experienced anything close to the life that you live, right? Anything close. And yet I could see it. I could visualize it as I'm reading the book. I can visualize where you were, the neighborhoods. I can translate memories of my own.
That was the goal. That was exactly the goal.
And it's really quite extraordinary. The closest thing I've ever come to a cult is I did Est.
Which was sort of like a short-term cult light.
And I was in a second generation of it. It was even less cult-like. But I did do that, and I did recognize some of the use of language and the coding of words so that words you'd be using every day actually had different meanings. And there's a lot of that in that
For
world.
Sure.
And there's value in a lot of that work too that I did when I was in my early 20s. But worth the price that you paid to get there, maybe not, just like what you said. But I will put a link to the book in our show notes so people can have that. And it's really so worth a read.
Thank you so much.
So what are you thinking about when it comes to relationships these days? What are the 3 things that you could either advise about or ideas that you have, or really like 3 big ideas on relationships?
If I can get to 3, I'll be happy. The main one for me is to really understand what they do. They are not what they're sold as, and it's really important to understand that.
You're saying they're not about comfort so much as they are about learning.
Yeah, they are about comfort sometimes. But I think the deepest way that I can talk about them is that hopefully they create containers within which you can deal with your shit at an increasingly deep level until you get to the root of it. Originally, monogamous relationships were a tool of the state. And there's a value for them there. I'm not saying anything negative about that because you can't actually have a society without some version of nuclear families, which is why outside of the U.S., arranged marriages have endured for so long. There's a reason for that. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it has utility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to have to get your own house in order in this lifetime or die trying. That's my philosophy. And if you find a meaningful partner to do that with, the parts that are beautiful are just above the ability of words to capture how powerful they are. And so there's a lot to them that is wonderful. And then some parts are the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. I can't remember who said this, and I've heard it attributed to multiple sources, but there's this great quote that says, "Love is the labor for which all other work is merely preparation."
Oh, that's a good quote.
Yeah. I've heard it attributed to Hemingway, Shakespeare. I don't know who said it first, but that's a good one. And in fact, that might be what I'd want people to leave with. If you're talking about relationships and love, here, I'll tell you what, I wrote something about it. So how about if we end with a little thing that I wrote?
That's fabulous.
Here it is. The child drifted languidly across to the old man and gazed upon him with his face made of sunshine. "Father, what is love?" The man, his own face a mask of lifetimes lived, paused for a moment. Then his voice rang clear as a silver trumpet. "Love is the thunderclap that breaks the barley and the wheat at the stalk. It is the bolt that splits the lonely oak in twain just as it sets fire to the bough. Love is the quest of heroes and fools, and a labor beyond all else. It stuns the field mouse and blinds the falcon, and rips the very sky in two. Love is the subtle reflection that clings to the dew and greens the meadow. Love carries both cornucopia and sword, and none, though they stuffed their ears with wax or lashed themselves to the mast, can do aught but to heed its call. Love is the very breaking of the world to know what lies within. It is both salvation and inferno. It is both the work and the reward." The child paused at this. An eternity flashed. Then again the child spoke. "Okay, Father."
Beautiful. Manny Wolfe, the next great American writer. Thank you so much. I just can't tell you how much fun this has been. I hope that your next venture comes out well, and I want to stay in touch, and we'll come back and talk about some of those other topics at some point in the future.
Perfect.
All right. I hope today's episode got you thinking, but you know we can only do so much in an open forum like this. If you want to look at your specific situation, book in that free relationship reset call. We'll figure out the next best move and set you on a path to a better relationship for both you and your partner. Again, you can just head over to relationshipresetcall.com and pick a time. You can also join our Passionate Partners Insider community on Facebook. There's exclusive content and resources there, or visit our website or our social channels to learn more about our programs, workshops, and private coaching options. All the links to everything I mentioned, plus my personal email, are in the show notes. I'll be here whenever you're ready. Now, I've got a quick request. I'd really appreciate your help spreading the word about Make More Love. First, if you haven't done it already, hit follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. It helps more people find the show, and it also keeps you in the loop. Second, leaving a review would mean the world. It helps us grow our community and reach more people. And finally, if you know someone who is struggling in their relationship, then share the show with them. You might just change their life. Thank you so much for spreading the word. I believe you had good reasons for choosing your partner. My mission is to help you reconnect with those reasons and discover new ways to make more love in your life and with your wife. I'm Ellen Dorian, and that's what I've got for you today.